Dude, this is the best episode I've ever had. Like literal gold. I'm going to have so many clips for YouTube out of this. You should definitely step into the role of like just talking a lot on social media yourself.
I will say my wife is awesome and supportive. And
yeah, give her a shout out, man. That's good.
Yeah, Kate, love you. You're the best. And
I just alley-ooped that for you.
Yeah,
I just laid that up for you.
There you go. Paid over 500,000 invoices a year.
Oh my God.
A lot. It's a lot. And we had, yeah. Can you imagine? And there's 12,000 entities in that structure.
Welcome to the Funded Now What podcast with your host, Andrew Lee Miller, brought to you by GrowthExpertz. You're in store for a chat about funding, marketing, startups, and all things growth.
All right, everybody. Hello and welcome back to the Funded Now What podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lee Miller, also known as Andrew Startups. And you're in for a treat today because you're going to learn about what the fuck is a coded invoice. Today, we've got David Stifter, the founder and CEO of PredictAP. He just raised another $5 million to help real estate people with invoices. David, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I have to say, when I saw my Google Calendar and I saw you're funded now what, I actually got a sense of like relief, like yeah, we have some money in the bank now. And the funding process and getting the money, it is a struggle. It is stressful. It is difficult.
Yeah.
Anyone who says, it isn't, like, either daddy and mommy are giving them money or they win the lottery, because it is as good as things can go until that money's in the bank. It is a stressful thing. So I'm excited to talk with you.
But no
today.
reason to celebrate once you get the money. That's the whole idea of the podcast.
The
job starts now.
You get about half an hour to like pat yourself in the back and feel good. And you're like, oh, wait a minute, we're burning money, and and planning it all out. And then you feel like I honestly feel like I'm never stopped fundraising. Even after closing, you're still talking to people. You're still making connections. You're always fundraising, even when you don't need the money. You need to build a relationship.
Yeah, you're networking. Actually, when you don't need it, it's even better because you don't have an ask. You're just like, hey, let's just stay connected, and knowing that you're gonna tap that shoulder.
By the way, all those people who were like maybes or like after that press release comes out, like, oh, I wanted to give you $5 million. Like, it's like, well, where were you 2 months ago, buddy?
Yeah, they didn't.
They all want to give you money then. Yeah.
Yeah, the haters, the doubters. You love to prove that wrong. So let's first of all, what does the AP stand for? AI powered?
Accounts payable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Predict accounts payable. And for the low IQ people like me out there, what is a coded invoice?
Yeah, so it's not low IQ. It's you've made good choices avoiding the difficulties of back office accounting operations. So accounts payable, invoices. So when you buy something, you got to pay someone. That's what it boils down to. And so for you and me in our regular day, we go buy a coffee, we give someone a credit card, it's done. When you're a business buying things at scale, right? You order 10,000 light bulbs. Well, you got a bill. You get 10,000 light bulbs. They send you a piece of paper, and you got to pay them. And so the world of business runs on invoices, on paper being passed back and forth. And a lot of times it's pretty simple. If you're you could be a really big company, like a manufacturer of T-shirts, right? And you're buying a lot of ink, a lot of cotton, but it's pretty simple, right? Ink, cotton, you pay the bill. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
I come from real estate, and so owning commercial real estate and a pretty large private equity fund called Colony Capital, which was $60 billion of assets. It's very big, complicated.
Wow.
Buying real estate at that scale is not like you go buy a vacation home and rent it on Airbnb. It's a lot of structuring, like financial entities and tax blockers, and so the company itself isn't buying this stuff. It's buying it through all these different entities, which leads to a lot of complexity, right? And so there's a lot of complexity around that. And then the actual real estate, there's a lot of complexity around accounting. But basically what it is at its core fundamental is, hey, you bought something, you have to pay for it. And when you're paying for it, you got to pay it out of the right bucket. And that's where it gets complicated, because in these big firms, it's a lot of buckets. You can't take it from the wrong one. And if you do the accounting wrong, you could be at best, losing some money when, a nice example of this is people may not know an office building. Hey, you go buy a big, $100 million office building, person cleaning the lobby, the owner of the building isn't paying that person. The tenants are, right? In their lease, that stuff's getting charged back. But maybe you're a smart tenant says, I don't want to pay that. I'll pay an extra $1 of rent. Okay, well, I have to remember for that one tenant, don't charge it that way.
Wow.
Or I have a cap on it. I don't want to pay more than 50 cents, and maybe it costs $1, proportionally. And so a lot of complexity around that. So at best, if you're doing this wrong, you're losing money that you should be recovering from tenants. At worst, if you're picking from the wrong bucket, you have investors and you're picking from this bucket to help an asset owned by these people. Well, now you're committing, pretty big fraud. You got intentional or unintentional doesn't really matter. You got to make sure you're doing it right. Wow. And that's a problem I came across in my job. So at Colony, we paid over 500,000 invoices a year.
Oh my God.
A lot. It's a lot. We had, yeah. Can you imagine? And there's 12,000 entities in that structure. And so if a bill comes into Colony, I can guarantee you Colony is not paying it. What happens is all these different things, it's for this fund, and that fund owns these 50 buildings, and you spread it across the 50 buildings. Basically, the bigger one gets more, the other ones get less. So that was complicated. And I had looked at, we'd done a really big systems project around getting everything in one system. And I had automated with the actual payment, check wire, ACH. That was pretty good. There's good solutions for that. Automating how you approve it. We had, back in the day, we used to have like a paper packet. Someone would walk around and find a person and like sign a check. You can imagine that job was real fun on Friday afternoon to get something
500,000 times a year.
Exactly. Some sore wrists there. But that approval thing got done. And then this upfront coding, very knowledge intensive. And I'll say, we don't appreciate the people who know stuff all the time. We had this woman, Chris, who had been there for like 30 years, and Chris knew everything. So she knew, and she had a staff with her and all that. Chris retired, and like $60 billion company can't pay a bill because Chris retired, and all that knowledge walked out the door.
Wow.
And that's where, to make it a little more analogous to something people may appreciate day to day is, hey, really good local coffee shop, right? Andrew, you come in Monday morning. You're West Coast, but here Pat's fan. There's a game's late. I want my Americano to get going, and my local place knows it, right? Monday morning they come in. Hey, Dave, here's your thing. I don't have to say it. They know my usual, so they understand the context of the situation to be able to give me what I want, right? Invoicing is actually very similar, where on the paper it may say Colony Capital for this thing. That could translate into a very complicated type of order. People's crazy coffee orders. You can imagine in this financial thing, very crazy situation.
Got it.
So what it boils down to is doing that traditionally is relied upon people that have been there a very long time and build this up. If they leave, all that knowledge walks out the door. And I was left in that situation. I was like, I want to do this with tech, right? And this is about 7 years ago. And I spent a year. I did not go out to be a founder. I had a really, really good job. I kind of made it. I was in a good, comfortable spot, and spent a year going to find the solution. And I looked, and there's other things that do pieces of it, like OCR, optical characteristics, scrapes data, or you can send it to India, and they don't know your coding. They can do a little bit of it. I didn't find a solution, and I'm kind of a geek at heart, and I'm seeing these new machine learning things, and I'm like, seems like a good use case. Back then you had to annotate data. That was the first hard part, and I was like, and by that I mean you had to explain the rules. So, easy example, you may think if I get an invoice for a utility bill, I always pay the total. Makes sense, right? Well, no, a lot of them, they're always a period behind, so you actually pay the current charges. You pay the total, you're paying twice what you need to pay. And so I had this light bulb moment, like, well, every time I paid the bill, I understand what I needed to do. I have the image, and I have what we actually did. That's valuable, right? There's a pattern to pick up on, just like your usual coffee order. It's like, it says this, but it means that. Like, someone can figure out that pattern. And then what turns out to be a really important part of this process is you have a feedback mechanism. There's a person in the loop, and AI is, as we all know now, it loves to lie, it loves to be creative, and you need to have a mechanism to correct it.
Rein it in.
So no one's going to pay a bill without anyone looking at it. That's like, fraud 101, accounting 101. Like, you have to have segregation of duties.
Of course.
And so every time you look at it, you can correct, and that can retrain. So it worked really, really well. And so I was in this moment where my career, I was maintaining more than building, which was kind of boring. I like to solve problems. And I had seen that no one was doing this well. And I'm sure, as a lot of people do, you always want to like build something, and
for yourself.
For me, it was, for myself, and more like, I think it's hard at big companies to appreciate people or treat people as you wish. And there's always reasons why, but I was like, I want to make a firm where I treat people like I'd want to be treated, and try to do right by that, and do right by customers and all of that. I had a vision of doing this a little bit differently. And so I said, hey, I want to leave my cozy, high-paying job, with 2 small children to be a low-paid prop tech CEO. And that's what I did. So, I basically made the decision, like, this is a good problem. I'm going to go solve it. And that was the start of PredictAP.
Love it. I love that origin story. How's your wife feel about you being a low-paid startup
Now
leader?
she's happy, for a few
You made
years.
it now.
I'll say for the first 6 months, I was terrified. I had this real fear. I was like, I just didn't find the tool that's doing this. I was like, oh, you haven't heard of Hippo AP? They're amazing. And I'm like, oh God, what have I done? So that was like 6 months. I was pretty afraid that I just missed the boat on a good solution out there. And I'm now very confident there wasn't one then.
Yeah, amazing.
But I will say my wife is awesome and supportive. And
yeah, give her a shout out, man. That's good.
Yeah, Kate, love you. You're the best. And
I just alley-ooped that for you.
Yeah,
I just laid that up for you.
There you go.
Yeah. Score the points.
Yeah, but having that true, backstop
Rock.
of like,
Of course.
yeah, she's, if things don't work out, we'll be fine, right? It's
that's awesome.
So that's great.
It's important. I mean, one of the things I love about San Francisco and Silicon Valley is there's a general understanding that there's no such thing as failure, and you really only regret the things you don't do. And if you had been like, I'm not going to do that, I got this cushy job, eventually you'd start kicking yourself in the ass for the rest of your life. So cheers for making it. But, I always tell people, do the hard things in life. Take that risk, take that jump. If you see a problem out there, that's the gold. If you see a problem, hey, why does this thing not exist? Amazing origin story. Thank you for all that backstory. But so are the customers that you're selling to the PE firms that have like 10,000 people?
Yeah, so the customer would be a private equity firm that owns real estate. And there's reasons why I targeted real estate. There's barriers to entry. It's very complicated, so
still old school, a lot of paper.
Yeah, REITs, owners of real estate, families that have, there's lots of. I want to come back in life as a family office where like they own $1 billion of real estate. There's like there's like hundreds of these things where there's like they own $1 billion of real estate here, and it's it's a lot of these firms that own a lot of real estate, and it's complicated and it's difficult, and this is just a frustrating problem. And so that, or the service providers that provide service to them. So CBRE is a really big real estate company that does services for, they have hundreds of thousands of employees. And so we're either selling to the owners of the real estate or the companies that do services for them.
Interesting. Very different sales process. When I hear trying to sell to family offices, there's almost no harder target to market to. They're not checking LinkedIn.
So
They're not responding to an email. But before we get into that, how did you raise money for this? So, you like you said, you had the idea, you're going for it. I know this is like not your first round. What you just closed $5 million like 6 months ago. Is that?
Yeah, so we're about 15 million all in. So the start was, myself, I put money in, and my partner, and it was friends. It was folks that I worked with that understood the problem. And I'll tell you, that is the scariest money. I just had, talking about you're always raising. I was talking to the growth equity firms are all, we're at that stage now where they're all circling. Yeah. But, they're like, well, what do you want to do? I want to make sure I get my original
friends and family back.
Friends and family back, right? Because that is money where, someone gives you $50,000 or $100,000. That's meaningful money for them.
Yeah.
That's scary. And that feels a sense of obligation with that. If an investment firm gives you money, they're professionals, they're big boys. You win or lose, they're
used to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we raised just over around $2 million with that. And this was with myself, my partner, and kind of friends and family. And they're investing in you. They're not investing in metrics or, you try to do right by. And I was actually excited that I had a couple friends that were in the venture world that were able to kind of give me a sense on value, right? Because, at the start, who knows what it's worth? It's nothing. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So I had invested in some VC venture firms, and I had a couple of them that were. It's funny. One of the people had hit me up about 2 years earlier to be CEO of a different idea, and this idea I didn't like. I told the guy, I was like, I think it's a bad idea. This guy is really, really, really smart, really successful guy, and he's like, I'm gonna sign it, give you a check today, and we're gonna go start this company. And I was like, I don't like this idea. I think it's not a good idea.
Good for you.
And I went 2 years later, and I went back to him. I was like, "Hey, I got a good idea now," and he was pretty excited to go on.
Wait, how did the bad idea company do? Did it fizzle out, or
it didn't come together? Yeah, it was a bad idea.
But you gave him a good opportunity with this one.
Yeah, so now he's
happy. He's about to get paid.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was it at the start, and then I'll say that the next, more institutional money actually came from the family office. So we have a company, Wise Ventures. So they're owned by the Wilth family. So the Wilths they're one of those billion-dollar real estate, owners of a bunch of apartments around, New Jersey,
Okay.
San Diego, all that.
Wow.
They're best known for the owners of the Minnesota Vikings. So they're,
Okay.
and I have a great story.
I've heard of that startup. Yeah.
Yeah. Great people. But, it's a family office, and they, if you think about the classic tale of like working your way up from the mailroom, I think in real estate and accounting, the AP role is like the mailroom, right? It's like this entry level thing where you have a lot of exposure to a lot of things, and you kind of learn the ropes a little bit on accounting and all of that. It's difficult. It's hard. It's, strength. And so one, I think some of the, the offspring that are now, big time successful adults running this has experience with that. And one of them saw us, we were in there doing a proof of concept, and one of them saw it, and they're, oh geez, I hated that role when I was in there, their time in the mailroom. And they were like, we want to invest. This is a terrible problem. No one has a good solution. And it's working well here, and we have a complicated business. Like, we want to back you. And that was the first one. And then from there, we had a number of customers who were investors in this fund called RET Ventures. RET is an interesting concept. Their investors are all owners of real estate. And so it creates this nice win-win situation where these owners of real estate, if they sign up with me, they're creating value with me, right? But they don't get that value typically, right? We get the value.
Right.
Well, in this idea, they're investing in this fund. That fund then invests in prop tech. And so it's a real win-win-win situation where these firms, first of all, can vet you with, and we had a number of customers that were already customers. And then they told RET, like, hey, doing good things with PredictAP.
You should invest. Yeah.
And then they go through diligence and all that and expose you to their investor base. And they do this great meeting every year where all the CEOs and all the investors come together, and you kind of have a speed dating. But they're the main backer of us now. So they're the primary source of funds, and then, a few other VC firms.
That's great. So if you had, so you've been through multiple rounds. I loved it. I love the friends and family stuff. Nobody's ever talked about that here. And I think back to, Jeff Bezos' parents put the first $250K in. Okay, parents, whatever. But that was like literally their entire life savings. They bet on their son, like with everything, got back $10 billion.
Good for them.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So you got to pay back the friends and family. You had to be like so wildly sure that you were. You're betting like crazy, serious relationships. Like you're risking everything on that. That's so sick.
Yeah. When you're thinking about what you're putting into this, this is a reputation and friendships I've built up over 20 years. Now, I don't think my friends are going to dump me if I lose, a chunk of their money. But you never know.
Yeah, I would.
But you're right. You're saying, what are you putting on the line? It's not just the paycheck I'm putting on the line or that stuff. It is, they are investing in me. They have faith in me. They're trusting me. And you're risking that. You have to have a lot of confidence. And I'll say at the start, my career has been solving problems. I'm really good at like getting into problems, digging into them, and coming up with good process or solutions for them. I'm not a salesperson. And I was very reluctant at the start even to ask, but then, are you going to do this or not? You have to make a commitment. And the commitment's not just my own money. That's the easy commitment. It's going to someone and asking, right? And some of these folks were like CFOs and CEOs, and they,
Yeah. So they have
the idea behind that.
It's not like cash was under the bed and here's our last $50K, go make us rich type thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It's not that. I wouldn't take from that. And I had some real family who was like, I didn't want them to invest because
it'll really crush out.
Yeah. I'll take care of them, but like, I don't want to take your, so
that's cool.
So, but also part of that was it created this is the intention here is to help people with how to grow their business, right? It created this really great referral network where, again, interests are aligned and there's commitment there, and showing their commitment, like, hey, I invested some money with this guy Dave, and he's got a good idea. Like, I really believe in it. And using that network then to make connections, looking on their LinkedIn to see who they're connected to. And that was the start of our sales. So that friends and family also turned into a great referral network. And it's interesting too to see how well that can work. Your first fund, the first investors can be your first sales force to an extent.
Okay, that's awesome and cool. Very cool story and advice. So now you get this first check or checks. How do you go out and get your first customers? I want to hear, how are you getting access to these family offices?
Well, this is where I have been in this industry for a long time. And back to creating relationships, I'm not a transactional person, right? So if Andrew, you say, hey, you do this for me, I'll do this for you. Like I do, I've always been one to try to
create value. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can, without any expectation. And a lot of times that leads to nothing, and sometimes you never do. And for many, many years, in real estate accounting, there's this like big piece of software called Yardi. It's the core accounting system. Most people outside of Yardi outside of real estate have never heard of Yardi. That's an interesting startup story. One guy started Onnit Yardi 40 years ago. Amazing guy. Onnit Yardi started this company, never took a penny of outside money, fully bootstrapped. They're now a 9,000 employee, $3 billion a year revenue company, and he owns 100% of it. Like that is an incredible story. Incredible. But so the Yardi ecosystem of this stuff, I've been working in it since 2004, and really digging into it and how to use it well. And so I knew a lot of folks, and they would have questions about it. And I'd go to the conferences and talk to people. And so in this Yardi world, it's like, this band's big in Japan. It's like I was big in Yardi. And so at the start, for years, I had been helping people, answering questions, connecting people. I need a reference for this type of consultant or that. And the first big client we got was Bridge Investment Group out of Utah. Public firm. They actually just got acquired by Apollo. And Katie Elsneb is their CFO. Katie was my auditor. So she worked at Ernst & Young as an auditor. And audit, as the head of IT, audit is like your frenemy. It's like they're kicking your butt every year, like controls and like, prove this didn't happen to that. I want to look at your control. And so she had visibility on what we were doing and visibility at what other firms were doing. And so she saw we were kind of ahead of the curve a little bit on some of these things. And so we kept in touch after she went from audit to be a CFO, and kept in touch, talked Yardi, talked shop, blah, blah. And when I had this, I called her up and I was like, Katie, like I need a guinea pig. I need a beta customer of scale and reputation. Will you help me? And she said, I'll give you 300 invoices. It's like, I have a little group here, and Bridge is a really big company. They have multifamily and industrial and office. Wow. They're huge. And so all these different groups, they're actually at the same time, we're solving this problem. And they all chose different things besides me. And Katie's like, I'll give you my bit. And we were great. And so we took that bit, and we got another division there, and it turns out actually and then they're now, 30, 40,000 invoices a month.
Wow. Is that your revenue model? You charge by the invoice scale? We
charge per invoice with a minimum. Yeah. So if you tell me, hey, we're 10,000 a month, we have a scale. So it's like,
it's a toggle.
$1.50 and $1, and we'll say, okay, well, you're 10,000 a month, it'll be $1.25, and your minimum's gonna be 8,000 a month. That's
how much is it saving? Like, is the pitch? This is something I'm seeing with a lot of AI startups. Do we say how much more revenue it makes them? Do we say how much headcount it saves them? Is it time? Like, what is the main value prop for PredictAP?
Yeah, so the easiest value prop to calc is time saving. So if you do this by hand, 5-10 minutes an invoice just to do it. Because it takes time to load. You got to load it down. So if you take a stopwatch the old way, it takes 5 minutes. We'll say ours takes about 10, 15 seconds. So just the top stopwatch time savings we pay for ourselves if you do the math.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the real value, though. I think the real value is
not fucking up.
Not fucking up, right? It can be very costly if you do that wrong. What do you really want your people doing? So if you own an apartment complex, like say, Andrew, you're like, I want a simple life running a 300 unit apartment complex. So day one, you're a smart guy, you're personable, you'd be awesome at it. I guarantee. Because what you do is you'd make community, right? You talk to people, you would sell the shit out of it. Like you would get all this going. Would you really want to be in the back room, like coding invoices? Like that's not the skill that's valuable at that site. What's valuable at that site is people, connection, community, all of that. And so these multifamily fleets, it was done there because the knowledge was on there. They're the ones that called the plumber at 2 a.m. They know what's going on. And so we really enable that knowledge to become more central and deal with it. Take that time off their plate. And the risk you have at that place is, hey, Andrew did make the shift. He's been great there. He kind of figured out the accounting stuff after a year. Well, Andrew left to go to a new place.
It's gone.
A new person, back to square one. I have to learn my 200 residents. I have to learn my 100 vendors, my 50 employees. And like, that's hard. That takes time. And you don't really want them doing that.
So, that's a tough value prop to explain, but maybe they feel the problem. So you still need a wedge in. That saving money is usually the wedge that gets them, okay, we'll use this. But also, reduce chances of making mistakes is also big. And then they expand because they see the value, and we also retain the knowledge. But you can have those 3 bullet points, like those are 3 solid bullet points. But okay, so how many customers do you have now?
It's about 120,
Wow.
including some of the world's biggest real estate firms. So, CB, we just signed Cushman.
Wow.
Starwood is a huge, 100 billion AUM firm.
Yeah.
Some really, really large customers. We have some very small customers. One of my favorite customers is a small firm out of California called America West. It's funny. They manage some properties in Southern Orange County. I grew up in Orange County, and literally my town, they manage a golf course, which is by there. And I love this one because they had 2 people in this role of accounts payable, and one of the positions was open. They were trying to fill it. It's hard to fill. It's a high knowledge, lower pay position, so you get a lot of turnover. And they also were old school. They like to write checks, which is like, people like to see
literal checks.
Literal checks. Some people like that because they like to see where the money's going.
Yeah, and to hold it and feel it. That's why they give the giant thing when you win the lottery.
Yeah, exactly. Big old golf check. And so about 6 months in, we got an email that says things are going great. For 20 years, my check runs have been Friday. Now they're Wednesday. We didn't have to backfill that position. So the company saved something. And the woman whose sole job was just doing this entry, she's been promoted to accountant. And this is like 15% of her job.
Amazing.
And I'm like, that is the win-win-win, right?
Yeah.
The company is doing things faster, more consistently, more accurately. And the person's job has been elevated.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm in Silicon Valley here. We're 100,000% all in on AI. And then I go home to Ohio, and I mention Ohio a lot in the podcast because it's like the antithesis of Silicon Valley. Like, people are literally not using ChatGPT and anti-AI. And I understand their point of view, but the fear of it taking jobs and stuff is like this. I actually I bumped into an old, like a 70-plus-year-old lawyer that I know on the train the other day. And she's like, I remember when I was getting told by old lawyers that computers were never going to be necessary. And it's the same shit. But that's the actual story. What happens is a smart company utilizes AI and realize the good employees can be upskilled now. And then 100% of their stuff they were working on is now 15 or 20%.
Yeah.
Because AI can do so much that they're 10x more productive, and that can actually be brought into bigger and better things. And so if you're listening to this and you're worried about AI taking your job, which I don't think anybody who listens to this podcast is
probably not
feeling that way, but if we've expanded to, our clips get seen by thousands of people on YouTube that are random. If you're listening to this and you're scared of AI taking your job, just fucking get better at what you do, and then you'll be safe.
And by the way, this is not new. This is not a new phenomenon. Look at 1900 America, 50% of people were farmers, right? Like, did the combine take our jobs? Like, no, jobs changed. If you look at, Margaret Thatcher's Britain with the coal mines, and like, that was the best job you can get in Britain. Like, but it was bankrupting the country. It's like the jobs will change. We don't even know what those next jobs are going to be.
Right.
And by the way, I think everyone that's right now, like, you are in the best position because I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, right? And they're learning math. And it's like, you learn math and you get the calculator, right? We existed before AI. So we have the judgment, the experience, the kind of know-how of that, plus these tools, which makes us incredibly valuable. I think there's going to be more challenges for folks that just grew up on the tools.
Right.
But learn the tools, use the tools, or don't. But I think the threat is obsolescence, not from AI making you lose your job, but it's you not continuing. It's funny.
To learn and adapt.
To learn and adapt and to push it. Back to the very early point of this call, when you talked about getting comfortable, that's part of it. Comfort is dangerous. You stop and you take that foot off the gas, and then you wake up and you're no longer relevant. And I think that's true of being in a company, a position, a role, and new tools. You got to keep learning.
Dude, this is the best episode I've ever had. Like, literal gold. I'm going to have so many clips for YouTube out of this. You should definitely step into the role of, like, just talking a lot on social media yourself. I mean, that's my one. I haven't even gotten into giving you marketing gold or asking you anything, but when you are a fountain of interesting knowledge and history and cool shit like that, you can really lean on founder-led, like, content marketing on LinkedIn being a really big thing. Real estate, this is the problem with real estate, this is that. And so tell me, what are you doing to acquire new customers? Like, what does the marketing stack look like?
First, I want to make sure we get a clip of me saying my wife is amazing. And,
we got that.
And then you saying that I'm really good at talking. Give those 2 to her. We can package that up. See how that goes. Andrew's an expert. He said it, not me, So getting customers has changed over time. At the start, it was people I knew, right, and networking and all of that. Then we brought in Steven, who's our head of sales, and it's I'd say that is the biggest transition to going from founder-led sales to creating a consistent machine that feeds at bats, right? Feeds you demos and intros. And so doing this, doing content on LinkedIn. And on LinkedIn, I never try to talk about my product. I try to talk about interesting, valuable things, for better, for worse, that I think that I would want to read, right? Doing
you're manually, let's hold on, the LinkedIn stuff, you're manually writing those on a day-by-day basis yourself? Or you've trained a GPT on your...
Well, no, of course I use some tools, but I have a concept, I have an idea, I have an interesting problem, and then I like plot it, and then I'll put it back in ChatGPT, and then I'll tweak it, and I'll get it to a good spot, and I have someone on my team, review it, and then I'll kind of take the final reviews. That's my thing. I have an idea of like topics, and then kind of create an outline on that. Then I'll write some, and then I'll have a person.
What are you doing to increase that the connections on LinkedIn?
So the connections I'm using, I had a pretty good network in my space, but I'm being much more active on connecting to people. When people reach out to me, talking to them, I'm always one to take a call to talk to someone, because you never know what comes from that. I've not been good on like using the Outmail and stuff. I haven't done any of that.
Yeah.
But
you don't need it's below your pay grade. You should have the sales dude doing that.
Yeah, but he's closing deals. I know.
So I think I got something out of this. So first golden nugget here, and we're coming up on time, so I'm going to try and inject a few before the end of the call. I've only mentioned it once on the podcast. When you're in a tight knit space like family offices and stuff, there are you go to Sales Navigator. You click leads, and there's all these different variables for targeting people. You get really specific on that. You can print out a list there, and you can have automation. So I recommend DuxSoup, DUX-soup.com. Fuck any AI tool. That tool gets me 60 conversations a day on LinkedIn. It's a $50 a month tool. So a lot of the family office people will accept, hey, I'm building tech for family offices. Let's connect. Okay, I'll accept this guy. They're not going to answer the follow-up messages. Like really high up, people don't. But then that organic posting takes over. They see over weeks, months, years, the stuff that you're talking about, and then they come in about, hey, we're having this problem actually. Hey, that's actually what you talked about, how we're taking 5 minutes per invoice. We actually are like that. I would love to talk and learn more. So because you're not being overly salesy. So you want to have I call it like ground cover, terms or whatever. A ground cover of always adding lots of targeted people and growing that audience.
Yeah.
You get benefits. A halo effect of that is you get invited to those prop tech conferences. You get invited to Real Estate Tech Con, I think is like next week in Vegas. I was going to actually go to that and find some potential clients for GrowthExpertz. One of our biggest successes early on, I started the company 10 years ago, was in prop tech, totally virtually. They hired me from Australia. Shout out to different.com.au. They got acquired, but a $100 million ARR company.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah, they do $100 flat fee property management using a bunch of AI and mobile apps, so that no matter how much your property costs.
Yeah.
But that was the first company that we scaled really successfully as like the fractional wasn't even a term. They were just like, we'll pay this guy and I hope he'll grow our company.
Yeah.
But so I love that space. And so I know that will really work in that, because you will get invited. It's a stuffy room. You get who's doing cool tech shit for those families. You'll get invited if your LinkedIn following grows. You get a lot of inbound opportunities to come and speak, or even if your marketing team pitches you, they check you on LinkedIn. They go, fuck yeah, we got to have that guy speak. I get those opportunities now with 20 whatever thousand followers. The second thing with LinkedIn I would do for you guys is make a super targeted audience and just run ads to them all the time.
We are doing some of that. We are doing some of that. It's funny. Just on the first one, I still have this psychological. It's me, and I need to get better at it. Like I am reluctant to like unsolicited reach out. I don't know. It makes me feel bad. It's like
about it. No. I'm gonna heal that trauma for you right now. So I had a client who was in his late 50s. He's been CEO of different telecom companies, and he's like, you don't know what this industry is like. I'm not going to beg for somebody to use and his product was like in the 7 figures annually to use his analytics dashboard for like the Verizons of the world. And he was like, I'm not doing any of that follow-up shit. And I was like, okay, so let's just do one message that says, hey, I'd love to connect with other tech leaders or other C-level leaders in the space. They'll accept it. We don't have to do any follow-up. It's just about someone would need to manually go and make those adding people. We want to grow your network. And in 3 years of working with him, we went from not having a website because he went to market through partnerships, not having a LinkedIn because he was totally anti any social media, anything, to having 10,000 followers and being a leading voice in the future of telecom as an executive and getting invited to speak at conferences around the Middle East where he's based. And I think that, it's put up or shut up. I remember the day that I mean, it's like, if you can't beat them, join them. I remember the day I was like, another social media, I don't want to be on LinkedIn. And I was late to the party, and now it's like absolutely the main way we do business. And so,
yeah, absolutely.
You don't need to sound desperate. You can optimize the messaging and just like let the automation just say, hey, I'm looking to connect with other leaders in the family office space or whatever. So you're just growing that audience. So all that effort with Clauding and ChatGPT and getting the team to review, all that stuff is worth it. It's mostly vanity metrics, and I 100% want to call out LinkedIn for using bots. I guarantee you all those likes are, the impressions aren't provable. So the likes you can see, you can click on the profile and see, but the impressions are bullshit. It's bullshit. And I see it across the board with every client I work with. Like I see, I'm, work in office now with clients in SF 1 day a week. And I see one of the founders always at every company, like working on a LinkedIn post. I'm like, that's not worth your time. Like, like we should be creating a big swath of content and scheduling it and not worrying about what happens, because it's only the inbound messages and people are saying, hey, I saw what you posted on LinkedIn that matters. We're going for meetings and clients. Anything else is a vanity metric. And so we got to be, but going back to the ads, it's not just anybody in real estate or anybody at a family office.
Yeah.
I want you and your team to talk to AI, whatever it is. What are the 100 companies we still haven't gotten that we need to get by end of year this year? And you can select those company names and run ads to them all the time. And the ad is, one ad can be like save 5 minutes per invoice, but more it's case study content. Download the case study, how this family office saved this much or did this, a video. If you have a really happy client like Katie, the early person that's, is she still a customer?
Still a customer.
Yeah, there we go.
Net retention over 100%, here we go.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, who's going to go back to using paper after AI?
No way.
No one, right? So I wonder if that's ever happened. Like, this AI is too easy, we'll use humans, I still have employees at GrowthExpertz. I'm getting the pitch all the time. I want to do what you said with we're upskilling those employees up the chain and using AI. We're never going backwards, but so get a video of her, talking about how amazing the experience has been. Again, it's not salesy, like click the link below. It's just give value. If you get a keynote at one of those conferences, you run ads on that video, but you just keep hitting them every month, every 2 weeks or so, especially if the audience is less than like 50,000. The frequency will be high. You can't frequency cap on LinkedIn, if you know what that means with ads. Like we've all seen.
I don't know what that means. Yeah.
Okay. On Meta, most people don't know to cap the amount of times someone sees your ad. The frequency that someone sees your ad destroys brand quality, because if I see this 40 times, I'm like, I don't want your fucking product, so usually on Meta and anything else, you frequency cap to like 2 impressions a week, and then other content kicks in. That means if they see that ad, then it's going to forcefully show other content to them to try and get money out of you.
Yeah.
I think
sense.
You can then retarget people who've seen an ad or engaged in it, and that goes deeper. Hopefully, I don't know if you have a team that knows how to do that, but the easiest thing, a couple $1,000s a month, those 100 people, 3 decision-making people at each of those 100 companies is going to see your ads a lot. And I've noticed in person at conferences, they're like, I've seen your guys' ad all the time.
Yeah.
Like for a couple grand, you really become really well known. It's like free PR. I mean, it's not free, but it's almost free compared to the $100K it costs to go to a conference. So I can't understate LinkedIn, one of the top things we focus on in marketing.
I'm on there a lot.
2026.
I'm on there a lot. Yeah.
I mean, like it's there's many pieces to LinkedIn, but that's really important. GEO, we kind of ran out of time, but
Well, I love to talk GEO. Yeah, that's a whole.
We'll have to do it. We'll do it one-on-one in another call.
But I want to share one quick thing with you too. I think you'll appreciate this as far as how to stand out and be different. So, in person at conferences, it's always hard to find an event that's interesting. And we launched something called Rent Rollers, which is like nobody wants to do drinks at 7, so we did a in-person jiu-jitsu event with Adam Wazinski, who's the current world champ. It's open to anyone. Wow. People had an awesome time. You get to roll with the world champ and test your luck. So trying to be creative on the in-person stuff too is pretty sweet.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah. So that was like around a conference, or that was just like
I've done it twice. OpTech and RedCon just happened, and
it did happen.
There's 1,000 options for customers at night. You know, and they're like, take our rocket ship to the moon. I'm like, do you want Starbucks with me? So I was like, 7 o'clock in the morning, something healthy, and a lot of people want to do it. And it was a really great event. And anytime you can see a world champion do anything, like those types of people are at such a level. It was a great event.
That's cool. Yeah, love that. Cool. Yeah, creative stuff.
Yeah,
and. Well, this has been super fun. Honestly, like I think that was more golden nuggets from a guest, like about life and impressing your wife and like everything. I'll get you those clips for Katie. I think I promise. And
thank you.
Yeah, David, it was an absolute pleasure speaking with you. And thanks for all that you do for the $1 billion families of the world. And keep on rocking it, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That has been another episode of the Funded Now What podcast with your host, Andrew Lee Miller, brought to you by GrowthExpertz. If you liked this episode, please subscribe. And if you really liked it, please share with other founders and entrepreneurs. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.